Hello, everyone. Welcome to Epistemic, episode number 21. Show title today is Extremists. Got a good episode here for you today. My name is Reid and your host, and also have some usual co-hosts here, Anthony Magnabosco and Dan, Objectively Dan. What's up, you guys?
Hey, Reid.
Yo. Hey,
Good to
hey.
see you again.
Yeah. And we have a special guest today here, Joshua Turner. What's up, Josh?
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Joshua is a former neo-Nazi turned secular humanist liberal. Joshua is the president and founder of the nonprofit organization Saved by Reason and attempts to combat white supremacy with critical thinking. That's pretty awesome. Cool. So we just do a quick recap of our weekends. So last weekend, I went to this conference called Dragoncon in Atlanta. Just 80,000 people, like nerds from every type of nerdy subculture. There's like anime, fantasy, sci-fi, but there's a skeptics track as well. So I went to that a lot. Had some really great panels there, some talks. It was just a really great time. Really cool.
Yeah, Reid cosplayed as Sailor Moon. You can check that out on his Facebook. It's really cool. He got the hair down really good.
I'm Googling who that is right now.
I did see this kind of heavyset guy cosplay as Sailor Moon with like a beard, and it was just like, and it didn't like go over his entire chest or like belly area. So it was very funny.
Those are the best kinds. I love those.
Yeah, the cosplay was the best part of that entire thing. There's just.
I went to DragonCon a year ago, and it was wild. It was, like you said, 80,000 people. There's just a shitload of people. It's crazy. You feel out of place if you're not dressed up in a costume.
Yeah.
And I hung around the skeptic track most of the time when I was there. I was giving a talk on SE, and then I was just interested in the discussions that were going on. But there were other presenters on topics too that I found interesting. Life on other planets, what's going on Mars, that type of stuff.
Yeah, the science track and space track were very nearby the skeptics track, so I was kind of bouncing back and forth between all those.
Did you go to Mandisa Thomas's thing? Because I think she spoke there.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I think somebody video recorded it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
My favorite panel / talk was Jamie Ian Swiss interviewed, I forgot his name, but he was a private investigator who specializes in cases about psychic fraud. It was really great. Really good stuff.
Holding people accountable?
Yeah, like getting people who have been ripped off from psychics, like upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars, just getting the psychics getting their money back and getting them jail time. It's really good.
My weekend wasn't nearly as exciting. It rained here a lot, but it gave me time to catch up on some video editing. I just finished uploading a video that I recorded last week with a couple on the trail. It's pretty different than what I normally do when I'm doing SE. You'll just have to check it out. It should hit at 4:00 Central today. And I've been just doing other little projects. Not only editing videos, but working on something with Rebecca Fox. She has a website called Rebecca on Paper, and she's an amazing artist. And we've been working on this little side project. So I had some time to devote to that. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty much been just kind of staying out of the rain and getting little projects done around the house. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, so school just started for me last week, so that's really fun. But before I got to get into it too much, I went to Alabama to see my girlfriend. We actually met at the Secular Student Alliance convention this year. Nice. And we've been talking since then, and we decided to make it a trip and go see a workout, and now we're kind of more open about that, which is cool. And besides that, I've been working on my new show, which is still happening, I promise. It's been a long time coming, but this next month is going to be the premiere date for the ACA's new show, Truth Wanted, which I will be host of. And I'm actually going to be meeting with some producers this week from the ACA to set about the actual dates for next month, because I will be premiering alongside some other shows with the ACA, and we're kind of deciding which ones we're going to do first, because we're going to release one each week alongside some of the other programs that they already have. So it's going to be really cool, and keep on the watch for that. So
nice.
Sweet.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Awesome.
Well, good. Cool. How about you, Joshua? What did you do this weekend?
This weekend's been pretty mellow. I actually just moved last week up into the mountains of Northern California because I need to finish my book the manuscript to the book by January. So I moved out here, to be secluded and have somewhere peaceful to finish the manuscript. So it's actually been nice. My daughter was here this weekend, and we just played out in the yard and chased the dogs. And, like I said, just a pretty mellow weekend, just hung out around the house and didn't do much but play with my daughter, really.
Very nice.
Awesome. Cool. I was listening to some podcast episodes that you were a part of, Joshua, just preparing for this, and you mentioned putting your book proposal out. So I guess someone bought the book, and you're writing. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, got lucky.
I love it.
What is it
Awesome.
like to write a book? Is it a daunting experience? Are you finding it easy, hard, something else?
It's daunting. It's intimidating, and it's hard going into certain parts of my past that I try not to think about too much, but they're vital to my story. So I really have to think about these things in detail and write them down in detail to really put the reader there. So doing that has been rough.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been seeing a therapist that I can make sure that my emotions and stuff are on track, and
Do you find interviews like this actually help you in those regards, like writing the book and any some of the emotional baggage that comes with your history? Or I'm wondering if we're helping you or hurting you when we're interviewing like this.
No, it's not hurting. It's definitely helping. What helps most is when I get letters from inmates, or when I go into jail or prison and talk to inmates. That really helps me, because I can see that this is really needed.
I guess this would probably be a really good time to get your story. So,
sure.
In a nutshell,
Yeah.
What happened to you?
What happened? Oh God, where do I start? Should I just start at the beginning and
Yeah, sure.
talk about my childhood and everything, because that's kind of where it all started. I wouldn't have become a skinhead, I don't think, if I wasn't raised in a conservative Christian home where politics were very right wing. I grew up hearing Rush Limbaugh in the car as a kid, and I think that I was always hearing about how immigration was destroying the country, and illegal, or not just illegal immigrants, but minorities and crime is destroying the country. So, I really feel that if it wasn't for those things at home, I wouldn't have become a skinhead in prison. So my mom and dad were Pentecostal Christians, and they raised us, my brother and I, very strictly. We couldn't do anything with our friends, like go to the movies like normal kids do. We had to, if it was any kind of media, it had to be Christian media. So things were super strict, and not just strict in a religious sense, but I also experienced a lot of physical abuse. My stepfather physically abused me. I think he was frustrated with having to raise a son that wasn't his, honestly, and he took it out on me. So it wasn't just religious dogma at home, because I know a lot of people grow up in strict religious homes and they don't lash out like I did. They don't. They still have really loving parents. And that wasn't the case for me. I can't say that I had loving parents. They were they were very abusive, and I just don't think they were ready for kids. So anyway, being raised by them really just made me rebel. I was very defiant. I knew that things weren't right at home. I knew that being told that Jesus was going to come. I was being told that since I was 5, and straw that broke the camel's back was Y2K. My parents said, this is it. This is the one, you know, the Bible says it in code. We're leaving before the year 2000 comes. It's going to rapture us. And on January 1st of the year 2000, I said, man, that's it, man. This is fake. You know, I've been hearing this my whole life. So I started rebelling big time. Started hanging out with people in the trailer park that were doing drugs, and a lot of these guys had swastika flags and the rebel flags. So I started sort of getting indoctrinated with racist ideas from these guys, and eventually started going to juvenile hall where there was skinhead members, and I wasn't a skinhead then, but you know, I would hang out with them because I was white, and I would hear the things that they would talk about. And when I was 18 years old, I carjacked a Jewish woman trying to impress some of these skinheads. I hadn't slept for about a week. I was on methamphetamine, and I got arrested and went to prison for 5 years. And this is where I met real skinheads, real members of organizations, political organizations, fascist organizations, real, you know, skinheads. So I just was lost. I didn't have a father to look up to, and I was looking for meaning in my life. And I felt like this was really comfortable to me because it was familiar. A lot of these guys were Christians. There was a Christian identity, a specific sect of Christianity called Christian identity, and a lot of them were Christians. So yeah, it just felt very familiar to me. In prison, we have basically, as a white, everything in prison now since the 60s has been run by race in California. So if you're white, you run with the whites. If you're black, you run with the blacks. So if you're white, there's subsections of being white, and there's woods, and then there's skins. And skinheads obviously are the skinheads that we know that, you know, they have the 14 words, they're neo-Nazis. And then woods, there's a larger range of woods. They can be anything from a non-affiliated white person. So just say an average guy that's white that gets locked up for a typical crime or whatever, goes to prison. He would be a wood, or a biker with like a Sons of Anarchy type guy, you know what I mean? Like those kind of guys, those are woods
Hell's
too.
Angels. Yeah.
Hell's Angels, yeah, that's it escaped me, but yes, that was the name I was looking for. So woods is a huge range. Sorry, I'm pausing because I felt like there was a question coming. Maybe not.
I was wondering what you said it real quick, but you were really worried about Y2K. January 1st comes, and then you started rebelling. I would think that.
Well, against Christianity, that's when I really started rebelling against Christianity.
Because it didn't come true?
Yeah.
Because you didn't get raptured? Is that it?
Yeah. At least
Okay.
my parents' version of Christianity. They were literalists, you know, they were Pentecostals. So I knew I hadn't given up on Christ at that time, but I knew that their perception or their interpretation of the Bible wasn't correct.
What did they? How did they justify it when they woke up that morning and everything was the same?
I remember my stepdad telling me that it really, that there was a mistake and it really meant 2002. So he was looking forward to 2002, and I honestly, by then, I don't remember what his excuses were because I wasn't at home a lot. I was 18 then, so I wasn't at home. But I've talked about it with him now within the last few years, and he still thinks he's coming. He just, last time I talked to him, I think it was the May 16th, 2015 date. So I don't know. It's just every year it's another time. It's another date that Jesus.
A prediction that can never fail.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So yeah. So. Ended up in prison with these real skinheads, and I told them that I was a skinhead on the streets. I knew enough about skinheads. I knew the 14 words, which are: we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. And that's pretty much like the motto that skinheads live by. So did
they ever say that you were not a true skinhead? Did you get the no true skinhead fallacy?
I did kind of, because there's organized skinheads. There's like groups like Hammer Skins and Aryan Front, and there's different groups of skinheads. And if you don't belong to one of these groups, you're considered an independent skinhead. And a lot of independent skinheads are kind of frowned on, like, you guys aren't the real deal because you don't belong to an organization. So at this point in time, I was an independent skinhead, and I ended up moving in with a skinhead with one arm. His name was Tyr, which was the one-armed god of justice. And he was a recruiting officer for one of these gangs called Aryan Prospecting for Aryan Front. And to be able to join Aryan Front, I had to put in work to prove that I was a soldier, to prove, my loyalty to the gang.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up having to commit crimes. I did a 14-month shoe term for an attempted murder. And, I did a lot of things that I'm definitely not proud of. That, those are the things that I have to write about that are haunting, But,
damn.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, so I guess we're all kind of dying to know, like, how did you get out of it? How did you turn things around?
Well, I paroled from prison in 2007, and I had this goal of trading in my boots for suits and being like this, a real clean cut skinhead that's, that could start a real movement that could go somewhere in America. But my drug addiction got the best of me, and I ended up going to rehab and realizing, I needed to dig a little deeper into my life and into my beliefs and find something else, because what I was doing wasn't working. So I actually, tried religion again. I went to a Christian rehab and tried, committing my life back to Christ, and it didn't feel authentic. So I started reading about other religion, and I had a friend who was really liberal, and he was an atheist, and he recommended The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. So I'd never heard of Richard Dawkins. I'd never heard of the New Atheists. At this time was about 2009 or 10, which was well into the new atheist movement, and I had never heard of it. So I read the book, and my jaw just hit the floor. I remember in the preface, and I just felt like Richard was speaking directly to me as far as religion, and just the way that he just dismantled, the irrationality and just all the foundations of religion. He just, the way he wrote about it just really impressed me. So I wanted to look into these new atheist authors more. So I picked up some Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens, and I started realizing this pattern of applying science or applying logic and evidence to your beliefs, or using those as a guide for your beliefs, basically. And at the time I was acting on emotions, so I was really into this. I felt like I finally had found a way to truth, but it wasn't until I picked up Peter Boghossian's book, a handbook for creating atheists, a manual for creating atheists, mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, it's been a minute since I read it, but it wasn't until I picked that book up it really gave me like just the fundamental tools that I needed to reflect on my beliefs and to find a pathway to truth on my own, which I had never done before. I was always looking for truth from somebody else. I was always looking for somebody else to give me the truth. And Peter was really the first one to show me I could do it myself, and he gave me the tools to actually do that. So it was then when I really had converted fully. I was no longer a Christian, was no longer a skinhead, and I was totally behind the secular movement and wanted to, dedicate my life to it and help change other people's lives. So I started thinking about what I could do. I reached out to local skeptic groups. We had a local group, Chico Skeptics, and they needed somebody to run their program at the time. So I became the Chico Skeptics president. I started a free thinkers group here, but they just weren't. I don't know. They just didn't feel like they fit what I needed to do or what I wanted to do, because honestly, I felt kind of out of place around a lot of these. We had a lot of college professors come, and I was really intimidated by a lot of these guys, and I didn't feel like I was going to be able to reach anybody like that. And that's really what I want to do, is to reach people on more on my level. So I referred back to Peter's book. I think I was just rereading it, and I remember reading his chapter about doing his dissertation in prison with inmates. And actually watching a lot of your videos, your Street Epistemology videos, I was thinking, man, I want to do that, but I want to do it in prison. So I got the idea for Saved by Reason, and started going to my local jails and prisons, and I found out it was really hard. And Peter warned me, man, it's going to be really hard to get in because you have to have a degree, you have to be an educator. And so I started to get bummed at the time, but right at the time, the Federal Bureau of Prisons passed a law that secular humanism was recognized as a religion in prison. So I just went and got registered as a secular humanist minister, and then I didn't need the PhD and all that stuff. So I just said I was a secular humanist minister, and they let me right in the front door. So that's how I started the classes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when I first came across you. I want to say it was 2 years ago, and somewhere on Twitter, whether Peter retweeted something that you did, or there was an article about what you were doing. Somehow along the line, I was aware that you were doing some sort of version of SE, I guess, with prison inmates. And then I lost track of you. And then somebody had forwarded me, actually, I think somebody emailed Pete, who then forwarded it to me, this interview that somebody did with you, and it kind of rejuvenated my interest in your story. So yeah, so that's really interesting. Were you were then going into prisons, and then what did you say that you were going to do, and what did you actually end up doing? Oh,
well, so what they would let me, the furthest they would let me do is go into the pods that the inmates lived in. They didn't live in cells, they live in like a dorm area. So I got to go into a dorm and then say, hey, my name's so-and-so, I'm a secular humanist minister with Saved by Reason. Does anybody want to talk about critical thinking with me? And so 9 times out of 10, more than half the pod comes up to talk to me, because most of the time they have preachers coming in talking about the same thing, and here's something really new that that they never heard before. So a lot of them, just out of curiosity, will come and talk to me, and we end up having really interesting conversations.
You said like more than half the pod. Like, how many people is that on average?
I'd say probably about 50 guys, just all circled around me.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be intimidating.
In a full-blown conversation. It is, but once the conversation gets going, and I can see that they're really engaged in having a good time. I lose myself, and I almost don't want to leave sometimes. It's like, oh gosh, the guard's like, time to go, and I'm like, we're having so much fun right now.
Did you just sort of freewheel it, or did you have a plan, like, okay, today I'm going to talk about morality or something, or like how did these conversations usually go?
So I talked to Peter, and he sent me his actual dissertation. It's like 20-something pages long, and he has all the recorded, like he recorded all the conversations that he had with the inmates in his class. So I kind of used that as my guideline. So he talked about justice, was like the first thing he talked about, and that was really my main concern, is finding certain things to talk about, because I in prison, there's certain things I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about let's talk about if the white race is the superior race, you know what I mean? And I got half the guys I'm talking to are minorities. So there's certain places that I don't want to go. So I want to have like a list of topics. So so justice was always high up there on the list, or honor, just things that that anybody can relate to from any culture or any race or religious background. So,
were those topics off limit though? If somebody really wanted to talk about their God belief, would you shy away from it, or how would that work?
No, I wouldn't shy away from God beliefs. I was just trying to stay away from more like racial stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember one time whether child molestation was okay or not came up, and I didn't feel like that was a good topic to discuss, because it got pretty violent, especially if I try say something that may come off as me defending them. I don't want to get stabbed. So
When did you stop beating your wife? Almost one of those types of questions.
Right.
Was it always sort of a 1-on-50 type of situation, or did you ever have a chance to sit down and do like 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 type of stuff?
I've in 2 cases had the chance to sit down like 1-on-1 between the glass with inmates. They can, in Sacramento County and Butte County Jail, they can request that to see a minister like face to face. And I have like I've sent out packets of, like, I have pamphlets, Say by Reason pamphlets, where it like teaches you Socratic pedagogy, like, you know, the basics of it, and it has my contact information. So I've been contacted by 2 inmates. Out of state, I have ministers that are, you know, that work for Say by Reason. They volunteer for Say by Reason. They're out of state, and they actually, you know, talk to inmates 1-on-1. So they probably have more experience doing that than I do, but I'm more familiar with the group settings. And to be honest, within the last 6 months, I really haven't gone into any facilities because I've been, you know, working on the book, which is really time consuming.
My understanding of the most prison populations statistically are mostly religious individuals. Did you ever encounter, when you were talking to these people, that they're like, oh, who's this like atheist guy coming in? Because I assume most of the people you were talking to had some sort of God belief or religious belief. Was there any like hostility there?
There was hostility mostly with the other ministers because they knew what secular humanism is. A lot of the inmates, I would have some, like, what's a secular humanist? But I would never say it's just basically an atheist. I would just explain, you know, it's somebody that, you know, doesn't have the belief in a higher power and you know, wants the best for humanity. And they, you know, they wouldn't have a disagreement with that. But I did have confrontations with other ministers. One of them tried getting me kicked out of the Butte County Jail because of my past. I have a felony on my record, but, you know, I've already gone through that with the jail, and this individual tried getting me thrown out because of it. So yeah, I've run into trouble that way, but not so much with the inmates.
Wow. So you said you studied Peter's dissertation. Did you get his original audio recordings, or did he have recordings for you to listen to?
No, he when I say recorded, it was just the conversations were written down. So it would say, like in Peter's words, what is justice? And then inmate A answer was this. You know, inmate B's answer was this. So there was never any audio recordings.
I think I've seen the thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I remember stumbling across it a while ago, maybe 2009 or something. Like, it was a while ago, several years before he wrote his book.
Yeah, he wrote it long before.
Well, I should say a couple years, not several, but yeah.
Right.
Are you able to record your own talks with these people, or is that not allowed? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't bring a phone or recorder in. So like, I just come back to my car, or when I get back home, I'll just try to, from memory, write down my experiences, but I'm not allowed to bring any type of recording device in.
Oh man,
unfortunately,
I would love to listen to something, or just read a transcript, like if you had just one of those court transcribers, type of person.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I wonder if there's a way to get around that and do audio only or video, like if you got special permission.
I bet you I could. I need to look into it more. I honestly haven't, but that would definitely be something to do. Because yeah, like you said, I could.
Did you find yourself like using some of the stuff that we do in Street Epistemology during your conversations, or I guess it must have been different if most of the stuff that you were doing was like 1 to 50.
Yeah. Well, I saw from you that you're very polite, for one, and you're very respectful. So that's what Peter's really stressed in his book. So I always approach it that way. I'm always very respectful. And then, just asking questions instead of trying to lead them in a certain direction, just ask them questions. So, but it is it's not the same as what you do, obviously, because, you're usually 1-on-1 or 1-on-2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different when you got a whole bunch of people, whole bunch more people involved, but it's still basically the same premise. You just, just keep asking questions. And
yeah. I'm
watch where the
wondering if
conversation
you found
goes.
anyone in the crowd that understood what you were doing and kind of took a liking to it and ended up kind of asking questions of the other people while you were there or not. Did you notice anything like that?
Well, I had some inmates write me. One inmate wrote me, was really on fire about it and was talking about how he was wanting to keep it going like every single day, doing a Socratic method class every day. But I stopped receiving letters from him after a couple weeks. So I don't know if he paroled or what happened, but yeah, that was really the only time that happened. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping is these guys will like start their own, classes and stuff, and it'll kind of spread like wildfire.
What advice would you? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
Oh, I was going to ask a little more on the details of how these kinds of group conversations work, because like you said, we're more used to like kind of these one-on-one kinds of things. How does this work? Or do you like give out a question and then let each person answer, or kind of give me a rundown of what that's like?
Yeah, so I'll say, so what is justice? Does anybody want to tell me what they think justice is, their opinion? And then if somebody wants to volunteer, they'll say something, and then somebody else will say something. Okay, well that was a good example. And then I'll ask them, so can you sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but can you expound on that more or whatever? So
do you usually have
I don't know.
I mean, are there guards in the room listening to you when you're doing this?
A guard lets me in, and then he leaves, and there's like a guard tower, like that's watching, and there's usually cameras there.
Oh my God.
But they're not like standing right next to me the whole time, and that's one thing I'm kind of scared about, because I don't want to see anybody that I recognize from when I was in prison that's gonna go, oh hey, that's Riot Child,
Yeah.
What's he, a dropout now or whatever? So
that could be awkward.
That's always kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah, no, maybe knowing, we don't have to get into it now, but I'm thinking maybe knowing a little bit more about the mechanics of how this all works could be useful for either someone who wants to try this, or there's a group here in San Antonio, they're Secular Humanists, and they have like a, I don't know what they call it. It's like an hour and a half service for secular humanists or soldiers that don't want to go to the other services that are going on. And they are increasingly getting more and more people that come to those things. 300, 500, 800. I think they had almost 1,400 people this 2 Sundays ago, something like that, just something ridiculous. So I don't know if that's unwieldy or not, but it might be useful for people to have a little bit of structured guidance on how to roll something like that out in that kind of setting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, what we're working towards is doing it the way that we were expecting to have to do it at the beginning, is going through social services and actually having a class and having an educator teach the class. So that's our end goal, because the way that it is right now, it's convenient to get us into the prison as a chaplain, but just the way that I have it, where I'm just standing in the pod and talking to 50 guys, it's just not really ideal, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, our end goal is to have something a little more structured, and to have
a curriculum or something.
A curriculum, that's the word I was looking for, a curriculum to go off of. So yeah, that's the goal.
Yes, you're head of this organization, Saved by Reason. Are you the only person doing this type of thing, or are there others?
Oh no, I have a full board. I have a vice president, Cherie. She goes and talks to the women on the women's side of the jails where I can't go on into. And then, like I said, I have some members out of state. I have a member in Texas and 2 in North Dakota, a member in Florida. They volunteer, and then they go into jails and basically do the same thing that I do. And I just tell them how to get how to go online, what website to go to become a chaplain, and then I send them a little bit of some of our brochures, and then Peter Boghossian's dissertation, and let them go and wing it like I do. And yes, and then we have an advisory board. Peter Boghossian's on the advisory board. Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk is on the advisory board.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that might be where I heard of you.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kyle's really the
did
one
he
that
do a
got
thing
me,
on you, a piece
got me
on
into
you?
this. Yeah, he is. We talked on Twitter one time,
Mm-hmm.
just totally randomly, and he was like, "Dude, you should come on my radio show. I don't really have guests on, but I think your story's in. You should come on." And
Yeah,
that's really what got the ball rolling for me.
I was kind of early on the secular talk train. He's great.
Yeah,
I listen to
same
him
here.
almost every day. He's fucking
Yeah,
awesome.
me too. Yeah, I love Kyle. He's a great guy. Good
I
friend
saw
too.
you on David Packman as well. I saw your interview there.
Yeah, David's a good guy too.
Mm-hmm.
Very
And
good.
you had like a segment on Newsy or some YouTube channel or news channel. That was good.
Yeah, that was interesting. I went to Washington, D.C. and was hoping to talk to some Unite the Right 2 guys, but there was like 10,000 counter protesters to 24 of these guys, and they would have got crushed. So the cops had them separated. Nobody was going to talk to the Unite the Right 2 guys except for media. And I was lucky enough to be with the media crew, but there was so much media there. They were only letting in like groups of media in, and then rotate out. So by the time we got in, it started to drizzle, and as soon as it started drizzling, they said, they cut the cord and they left Unite the Right 2. So I only got about 5 minutes to talk with about 3 guys. So it wasn't like the interaction I was hoping for, but I did a little bit of SE with these guys, and I just was asking them what rights do whites not have, because that was their whole thing, is they kept saying whites need civil rights. So instead of trying to argue with them, I was asking him to just explain that a little deeper. What rights don't whites have? And he couldn't really give me an answer, so that was interesting, but I wish I would have got to talk a little longer and with some of the leaders was my goal, but
yeah, sometimes in
really
those situations you have little control over it. I think we watched that too before we brought you on, so we'll put a link to that in the video description.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Well, so what are your future plans for the organization? Do you have any long-term goals?
Yeah, well, like I said, I want to transition from doing the chaplain thing to a legitimate, so going through social services, having an educated or having an educator teach our classes, and then also I'd like to get these classes implemented like on a federal level to where they're in every prison in America, because I really feel like this type of strategy, this type of tool set is going to help reduce our recidivism. I think this is an opportunity for me to really record and have evidence that this is reducing the recidivism in inmates. And with that evidence, I hope to make these hopefully mandatory classes for any inmate that goes into prison.
Yeah, you might be in a really good position to quantify it better than we might be able to. We were actually talking about that on the last episode. How do we measure the success of this? And you literally have a captive audience, if you'll forgive the pun. And yeah, maybe you could actually do some long-term tracking, long-term studies of the effectiveness of your approach over a longer period of time.
Exactly. More so in prison, where inmates have like a sentence. In jail, it's a little more difficult because people are usually in and out of jail more than they are in prison.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, good distinction. Okay, so if there was somebody who wanted to help you out, whether they wanted to make a donation or maybe help you with the curriculum, or even they wanted to mimic it elsewhere or something else, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I mean, they can contact me. savebyreason@yahoo.com, or they can visit my website, savebyreason.org. And yeah, I would just, if you're trying to start it on your own, and just do what I did and reference that book by Peter Boghossian and try to find his dissertation, and use that as your guidepost pretty much, and then your channel as well.
Oh, thanks. I'm kind of wondering what the reaction would be if you were allowed to show a video or two to
in jail
class. Yeah, are you allowed to do that?
I'm not, as far as I know, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, maybe I'm sure once we have like a class, an actual class setting, I'm sure we can do that for sure.
Awesome.
We're still just kind of like in the early stages right now, just trying to figure out how things work.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. It's crazy, but yeah. So other than that, I'm working on my book and hoping to. I've always been passionate about writing. I've always wanted to be a writer, so I'm hoping I can make a career out of just writing. I'd be so happy if I could just pay the bills by writing. So that's really a big goal of mine, is to do that, and raising my daughter. Being the parent that I always wanted to have. The parent that was loving and that teaches my child how to think rationally and for herself. And, it's pretty much what my life is all about right now. It's an exciting part of my life. I'm enjoying it. And sometimes when I look back, it's weird. It's weird to think that was me. I sometimes think that I wonder how I made it through that, and I look at that person as a completely different person. So it's totally not who I am now, and kind of strange to think that was me, But
well, we're really glad that you made the journey, and you're doing your best to make amends and turn things around, and then share your story with us too. I think that's really great, and it's really nice to have you here.
It's super inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I love sharing my story. It's not something I thought I was going to do. Not really proud of the person I was, but I've come to realize that sharing my story has helped a lot of people. So, as much as I get the opportunity to do it, I'm more than happy to. So I appreciate the opportunity.
For sure. And you're more than welcome to stick around too while we finish the last part of the show here.
Sweet.
And feel free to jump in too.
Okay.
Yeah, if anybody in chat wants to type in a question, feel free, and I'll ask it for sure. But I guess in the meantime, a few weeks ago, moving on, I tried out this cool little experiment that I found out from this another YouTuber, a science-based YouTuber called Veritasium. He had a video where he interviewed these people out in public. He gave them the sequence of numbers 2, 4, 8, and asked them to figure out what those numbers, like what rule those numbers followed. He had a rule that the numbers followed, and he let them give another sequence of 3 numbers, and he would say, yes, that follows the rule, or no, that does not follow the rule. And after they did that for a while, they would try to guess what the rule was. And I tried that out for myself. I think it's my second to last video, and it's a really great little thought experiment. It's ultimately about the value of falsification. The typical pattern is people think of a rule in their head and then give numbers to try to confirm that rule, and that usually goes on for a little while, and then it's always yes questions because the rule is actually any number in increasing order. So pretty much any numbers you give out in increasing order will follow the rule. You'll get a yes answer. But then people start to try to disconfirm their rule, and then they eventually figure it out and kind of have a conversation about the value of falsification. It's a really great little thought experiment game. I recommend it.
I think you have one video on your channel about it. Are you planning on doing that again, or was that sort of a one-off thing?
I think 2 weeks ago when I went out, like anytime I get more than 2 people or like any type of group that comes up to the table, I'll usually just go straight to that because that seems to be a fun game. A lot of people can do together because they usually, talk amongst themselves about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good icebreaker. It introduces some good concepts, and I'm thinking too, like throwing out a video like that every once in a while might get way more views than a typical SE conversation that might be a little slow and drawn out. Something like that, if it were to catch on and get thousands or hundreds of thousands of views, could be really, really good overall for your channel and probably SE. So we should probably, the content creators that are out there should probably start thinking about ways to do something like that. Every once in a while, mix it up, do something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Cool. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I guess some other audience question, or just a question, is what do you think about using a Jenga metaphor for SE? We heard about that on Twitter, I think. Who had that on Twitter?
Adam does SE. I think it was one person, and maybe Dan. I think that they were chatting about that.
Not me, other Dan.
No, not you, another Dan. So the Jenga thing is, if you ever see the Jenga game, it's sort of like these interlocking, or you stack these little blocks and you build these different towers.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny too, because they were talking, I've heard Ty mention this also, Tyrone from Let's Chat, also referred to a Jenga metaphor as you have the stack of beliefs, and then you're constantly rearranging the stack, maybe lowering them. If you decide that you don't believe something anymore, you might pull it out of the mix, or something that you might be motivated to do is based on something else in that stack. So I think it's a good metaphor. I had to laugh when I saw the chatter about it, because did I mention this earlier? Yeah, me and this artist Rebecca Fox have been working on. She came up with a 10-page comic book that shows these people walking around with these stacks of Jenga blocks. It's sort of like their face, and then from like here on up is this big tower of Jenga blocks. And she wrote this wonderful 10-page comic, and we were sort of brainstorming, how can we call attention to this really cool thing that you've done? And I had the idea of taking her book and turning it into a video. So we'll show all 10 pages. It'll be narrated. We'll have some sound effects in it. And then if people want to go ahead and buy the little 10-page booklet, they can do that. Or she has other books on her site as well that are along the same lines as critical thinking and questioning. And she's a huge proponent of street epistemology. So we might start seeing Jenga blocks a lot more when people talk about SE.
Heck yeah.
Love it. Yeah,
Love
Dan's in the chat, and he mentioned it's more like a fractal Jenga. Like, even if you go into the single block, that block can have like a whole Jenga tower of sub reasons for that. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it's cool.
If we don't have any other questions, Josh, I'd love to ask you something else.
Yeah, totally.
If you're into it. So I don't know how much you know about me, but my deconversion experience involved SE in a way, and it was through thinking about specific questions that really gave me like certain pause. And you mentioned that like reading Richard Dawkins and some other stuff kind of gave you those questions. Were there any specific questions that were posed to you that made you kind of change your mind about things? Like, I know for me, for example, it's like the outsider test of faith, understanding if other people had, faith in various contexts, if it's a reliable method of knowing things. You kind of had a different set of beliefs in that you had sort of this white nationalism background. Was there any specific questions that kind of questioned that thought process that really stuck out in your mind?
Yeah, definitely. What I believed in white nationalism because I felt that I had arrived there logically. I felt that there was evidence for that position. So when people began to question that evidence, I started to look into the evidence myself. So one reason for me believing in white nationalism and this whole conspiracy that there's a Zionist occupational government running the entire world, pulling this, is because there's a document called the Protocols of Zion from I think it was in the 1800s, and it was supposedly a document where all the leaders of this Zionist movement were at this meeting, and they had all written down their master plan for taking over the world and enslaving the Aryan race. And so I believe that this document was a valid document. But once I looked, because I'd been told that in propaganda, so once I looked into it myself, it turns out that the document's a complete fraud. And so it's just small examples like that where I felt that I had a logical position because of some kind of evidence base backing up my position. And then once I would reflect on it, check the evidence myself, it would turn out to be either false completely or just, evidence being manipulated or just something like that, it would never turn out to be genuine. So yeah, so just, several examples like that, where I thought that I had evidence to believe in white nationalism. I, soon began to realize I didn't have any evidence at all. So, and I still don't see any arguments or evidence to believe in it today. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you had this, what you would consider an evidence-based belief. And it was just the kind of breaking down of that evidence, seeing if it was reliable to check on that. Which is really interesting to me. Right. That was very different from my experience. And I mean, other people have different experiences of how they come to their beliefs. But do you think that your case is typical amongst, I mean, specifically white nationalist circles? Do you think most people have what they would call, similar kinds of evidences, or do you think it's more just base prejudices? What do you think is the typical?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I think there's a spectrum it just depends on where an individual falls on that spectrum. But for me, it really wasn't. I never really considered myself a racist person. I didn't hate anybody based on their race. I really felt like that that my culture was under attack, and that was a Zionist conspiracy. So I felt that I believed in the truth and that I was being logical about my beliefs. But I know that there are people that don't have anything to do with logic when it comes to those beliefs, and it's just all about their hate or their emotions, or just wanting to belong to something, or things like that. So yeah, it's a spectrum. I really can't say. In my experience, it personally has been it's been rare to see people like me, but that's just my experience with people in prison. Obviously a lot of people in prison act on their emotions, are very so they don't really stop to think logically. So I haven't run into a lot of people like that. But for example, like Unite the Right to, the guys that I was speaking to seem like guys that arrive there logically. So
that, my gut feeling tells me that most people, even in those circles, feel like that they come to their beliefs through a logic of some sort,
right?
Whether that logic is valid or not. And I think that's very interesting to come into those conversations with that in mind, so that you know how to approach people, not to just dismiss them, but to take that logic kind of seriously and to kind of play with it and kind of examine what they're saying, if that makes sense. But I think that's a problem people seem to make. I mean, you see this on Twitter all the time. I don't know, you call people a name or something, and whatever, it doesn't mean anything to them. You're buying into the narrative. You know what I mean? You're only supporting them, if anything, because suddenly these other people they don't understand. They don't see my logic. You know what I mean? They're not engaging with me on what I think is true. So,
yeah, one thing I try to stress personally is the way we interact with them. Screaming at them, calling them names it really isn't helping. I know what they say is very profane and disturbing, but you're fueling their narrative when you do that. It's just feeling the narrative that they're the victim. So I really stress, that's why I went to Unite the Right to talk to them one-on-one in a respectful discussion, because that's what I really feel like we need. That's the only way we're going to change anybody's mind. So yeah, I really try to stress that.
Yeah, and punching them as well. That was kind of a meme for a while. Like that's probably not the best idea.
No, I remember that. Yeah, Dan Arel, he's a writer and a blogger, and he was spreading that whole punch a Nazi thing, and I went on a podcast to pretty much debate his points and stuff, because I was very disturbed by that. It's definitely not the way to go about it. We're just gonna help fuel their narrative and help them recruit more people when you do that.
Oh,
Totally.
we'll have to get the link to that and put that in the show notes too. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that was a Lalo Dagach had Dan Arel on his show, and then I did a follow-up show to rebut his points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love Lalo.
Yeah, Lalo's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Well, any other questions in the chat? I don't really see anything. Any other announcements, guys?
There was another question about, is it worth joining the Discord server? I would highly recommend it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think the Discord, there's been a Discord server for Street Epistemology for a number of months. It's just kind of languished, but it's gaining interest, it's gaining momentum, and people are joining it. In fact, it's really cool. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's like a forum, and you can download an app for your mobile device, or you can use a browser. But I use my phone and my iPad, and it's not only a text-based browser, but you can voice chat also. So we have these different channels where people can go to study street epistemology or talk about philosophy or some other subject. And it's a really great way to interact with a lot of your favorite content creators. Most of the people who are generating SE content are on there. So you can ask them a question, or we've even been experimenting with putting an earbud in our ear and going out. I know Reid did this once, and then I've done it a couple times. The video that I'm going to release at 4 o'clock, I show, like, I call attention that I have an earbud in, and I'm interacting with people who are listening, and they're listening to me live conduct an interview, and even give me questions when I got stuck. So it's a really cool way of learning SE and interacting with people who are in the community. So I highly recommend checking it out. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. You can join that. Please check it out. I think the future of SE resides in that Discord server. I think that's where we need to go.
Okay. I just realized something. I was wondering, maybe you guys can give me your thoughts on this. Obviously what sets my story apart from other former skinheads is the whole atheism angle. Books like The God Delusion inspired me to leave the movement. And normally you don't hear that. You hear, I know specific former skinheads that left because of Christianity, so just to hear atheism is different. And Sam Harris was a very big influence on me, and I really highly respect Sam Harris, and his work was very impactful and me making my deconversion. And lately, there's been this smearing of Sam and his I guess he's called a pseudo-intellectual, and I guess just skepticism in general is just being smeared, and it's being done so by other former skinheads, that I know, and it's kind of going against the work that I'm trying to do, and it's frustrating for me. And it's coming from the left, and I consider myself on the left, so I don't know, I just feel really like I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place right now, because people like Sam really helped me and gave me a tool set that I think is valuable. And then, there's these people saying the exact opposite. I'm wondering if you guys have noticed that. And
yes,
if you have any advice for what I should do.
I want to talk about this first, because
okay.
When I was at, I'll just say, when I was at an event recently, a friend of mine had brought up Sam Harris and was criticized for it because she said that she liked Sam Harris. Just for saying that she liked him, didn't even mention specifically why or anything. And it was this whole debacle. And I was shocked that people would be so up in arms about this, because I too was very influenced by Sam Harris, especially in his work of neurology and understanding how he comes to these beliefs. And what I think it is I don't know, because I'm also discouraged when I hear that, because as a skeptic, I'm supposed to be able to look at all ideas equally and with the same amount of scrutiny, and not feel like that I need to censor myself or censor anybody else about their beliefs, that we take these things on. And that's kind of like why I was asking you about when you're talking to these kind of white nationalists and stuff. I'm sure there's lots of people who will tell you, I'm sure you've heard this, who say, why are you even giving them the time of day? why aren't you in the crowds of these people protesting them? You know, and it's because I think you and I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just speaking from experience, we know that that doesn't change people's minds very well, like at all. And again, we're playing into those narratives. I'm always thinking in like narrative constructs and stuff because I just find it so fascinating. But yeah, I think it's sad and I don't know what to do about it. But I think that it's that people should be able to talk about all ideas equally, even if they are wrong, because we should be able to give them the scrutiny that they, you know, if we can, we should be able to talk about it, right?
Absolutely.
This is my 2 cents, but
right.
Okay, I guess I'll throw my 2 cents. Two things that come to mind. First, I notice a lot where Sam complains that people are misunderstanding him, whether it's intentional or not.
Right.
So I do think that there are probably some things that Sam can do to improve comprehension, to try to reduce some confusion on things.
I agree.
I think it comes up.
I think he's
always
deliberately provocative.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that'd probably be my that's like the one half of it. The other half of it is, I think, people who might be critical of him. It seems to me that they hear that he said something and then they take it, they just assume that it's what he said. They don't usually look into it. They didn't maybe listen to the entire podcast that he did with Douglas Murray or Scott Adams or somebody else and then form their own opinion of it. They're hearing somebody say that he said something and then they take it as gospel and then they religiously adhere to it.
Right.
So I think my advice would go to both sides on this. I think that there are things that Sam can do to improve his. He's a great orator, but time and time again, people tend to misunderstand what he's saying, and maybe if he was a little bit more careful with his words and simplify them, make them very basic, it might improve comprehension. And then the other side, I think, is actually research what it is you think that he said and see if that's what he said. Give him a fair shake. See if you can if you hear a criticism, ask the person to explain exactly what they think Sam said and where in his podcast or his writings did he say that. And I think you'll probably find some disparities there.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess that advice is maybe less to you and maybe more to just to other people.
Right.
But as far as like advice to you, like I get that too. Like I get pushback as far as what we're doing, or I see these things as distractions. And it's great to hear criticisms and to weigh it, but if it's being presented in a very juvenile way, and it seems like more to kind of waste your time than to actually help you. I move on.
Ignore it.
I move on because I feel like I have a good view of the strategic landscape here, and nothing's going to take my eye off the prize. So don't get too roped into those conversations or those distractions. I think would be my advice to you.
Okay. Yeah. I find lately I've been find myself defending Sam Harris a lot lately, and it's very distracting. So.
Yeah, I would say
you ignore it a little more.
I would say this is another example of people being human. Like just because we have fellow atheists and skeptics, we're still running this evolutionary hardware that religion is also based on. So just because we're an atheist doesn't mean we're not running on these same types of psychological and these confirmation biases, these heuristics. And if we have someone who we think is not part of our in-group and another person in our in-group maybe likes this out-group member, it might lower the status of our in-group. So it's really about being comfortable with people of any out-group. Like just have a bigger circle. Like we have different tribes. We need a bigger circle to rally around. Like he's a fellow human.
Yeah.
He's not perfect. I'm sure he has some great ideas and maybe some not so great ideas. Feel free to talk about whatever. Like it's not good people versus evil people. We're all human.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're not friends with people who disagree with you, you need more friends.
Right.
I really think that.
Yeah.
The world's a big place. There's a lot of ideas out there that we can't all be experts on, So
Yeah.
That was a good topic. I'm glad you guys brought that up. I have to get going pretty soon.
All right.
Can we do the wrap up, guys? Can we do the announcements? I guess we're kind of on the announcements section here.
Sure thing. Dan, want to go?
Yes, like I said, tune into my stream tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Central. I'm going to be having Pine Creek on, my buddy Doug.
No way.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking in calls and stuff on the Truth Wanted channel.
Talk about surrounding yourself by people that you disagree with.
I know.
I'm just kidding, Doug. I love you.
I was trying to get a pastor friend of ours on this week, but he couldn't do it because I do want to have other people who don't share the same beliefs that I do on our show.
That's awesome.
This is going to be a really experimental program, and I'm really excited for it. So it's going to be really awesome. And also the back cruise is coming up. And I think you're going to be going to that, right, Anthony?
I have 2 tickets. I am planning to go. Yes, yeah. I think I'll probably head up there with Hector Garcia, the author of Alpha God.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to be there too. So if you're going to that, check us out there.
Oh, nice.
That's it on my end.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll go next. Well, I mentioned the Rebecca on Paper thing. That's really cool. Matt Dillahunty just released the video of my talk with him at NanoCon. That's on his channel. I have a near identical copy sitting in YouTube waiting for me to release it in a couple of days. So if you subscribe to my channel, you'll see that. That turned out pretty good. I'm going through and I'm also updating the metadata on my YouTube videos, which is really time consuming, but I'm going through and updating all the descriptions. And YouTube now allows you to add hashtags to the videos. I don't know if you've noticed it.
Right.
It shows up to 3 hashtags. You can have more in the video description. So I'm going through and I'm adding like a hashtag Street Epistemology, hashtag Magna Bosco, hashtag faith, something like that. And then I'm also adding some, depending on the video, I might have hashtag Street Epistemology training or Street Epistemology presentation, Street Epistemology quick clip, that type of stuff. So I think it will make it easier for people to follow a string of related videos as opposed to maybe going to the next suggested video that YouTube has. You can just click the link. You can just click the hashtag and see commonly themed SE videos. So I'm going through and doing that. And then I mentioned the Discord server. The last thing I wanted to mention, on September 26th, we were talking about Discord, the Atheist Community of Austin, of which Dan is now apparently a part of and has a show, is they also have a Discord server, and they have I think they have 1,000 people who have subscribed. Do you subscribe to a Discord server? You join it?
Just join it.
Join, yeah.
I guess they're members, right? So I think they crossed the 1,000 member mark, and we want to cross promote SE and also the ACA. So on the 26th of September, I think it's about 7 o'clock at night, I think Central Time, we'll be doing an Ask Me Anything with me. So I'll be on their server answering all questions about Street Epistemology, atheism, etc., with the hope of getting some of those folks to come join the Street Epistemology Discord and vice versa. And that's what I got going on.
That's great. Right on.
Awesome. Cool. Any announcements for you, Josh?
No, not really. Just if anybody's curious about Saved by Reason, again, savedbyreason.org, or if you'd like to contact me, savedbyreason@yahoo.com. But yeah, I'm just kind of laying low writing right now, so not a lot going on for me.
Cool. I guess the only announcement for me, speaking of Discord, I'll probably go out on Saturday this week to do some SE, and I think I'll announce 11 a.m. on the Discord server. I'll be out doing a live SE if the technology works out, if I have a strong enough signal out there in the California hills. So
Awesome.
Excellent.
awesome. All right. So let's wrap it up again. My name is Reid Nice Wonder, aka Cordial Curiosity. You can find me YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Cordial Curiosity. There you go. Anthony?
Anthony here. Magna Bosco is my Twitter. It's at Magna Bosco, and my YouTube channel is Magna Bosco 210.
yeah, catch me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan, and my new show, Truth Wanted. Subscribe to it on YouTube.
Awesome. And what was your email again, Josh?
Twitter is @SavedByReason, and email is savedbyreason@yahoo.com.
Love it. All right. Great show, guys.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun.
Joshua, thank you so much for being here, man. It was great.
I had a great time, you guys. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And it was really great to meet you.
Sure
Keep
thing.
it up.
All right, everybody stay on the line, and we'll end the show now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for